Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and this is the Astral Library. And today we're back at it with another beginner's guide video. This time we are covering LGBTQIA plus romances. So every book on this list is going to be an explicit LGBTQIA plus romance from a completed series, just all-encompassing, ready to go to pick up for your pleasure. So today I have 9 books for you and all of them are some of my favorites. I love them. I'm going to try to give you the quick little synopsis of what they're about and why you should read them. And maybe kind of a tagline of like what you're looking for in a romance to try them out and expand your reading taste. Because that's what the series is all about, learning to expand our reading taste outside of things like pride. So let's go ahead and dive straight in. Okay, the very first recommendation I have is for all my sports lovers. But I also want to recommend this to non-sports people because this is not any existing sport. It is a completely made up sport. And that is, of course, The Foxhole Court by Nora Sakavic, part of the All for the Game trilogy. Oh boy, what can I say about this book? First off, just look at the gorgeousness of this cover. So these are actually special edition covers by, well, I'll put the artist's name, I forget, I'll put it on screen. They're amazing. But the actual covers look like this. It is a self-published series by Nora Sakavic, but in this book we are following our main character, Neil Jostin, who has been on the run for his entire life trying to escape his father. For a lot of those years he was running away with his mother, but his mother has passed away recently and Neil is kind of on the last strings of life. He doesn't know what he wants to do. But one thing about Neil is that he is obsessed with this sport called Exy. He played it as a kid and even now he's been craving for it. So after his mother's death, he gives into the temptation and he ends up playing for a high school team. But unbeknownst to him, his coach sends his tape to colleges trying to get Neil recruited, and one team comes knocking on Neil's door looking to recruit him. However, this team has connections to his past, and now Neil must decide between joining this team and risk being potentially found by his father or finally doing something he loves and trying to stand his ground. Oh my god. This is one of those series that is kind of like a technical wreck, but it sticks with you for so long. The characters in this series have lived in my head for rent-free for years. I'm talking, I read this book back in, I want to say maybe like 2018, and the way this book had a grip on me. They all come from a very diverse background in that the college team is the worst college team in the Exy League. So we have people coming from backgrounds where they used to be strippers, where they've been in jail, where we have people under court-mandated medication, and they're all just such vibrant characters and very much the underdog. And so this is a series where we follow the underdogs as they're going against the most epic teams trying to claw their way to victory. And Neil as a main character is so fucking funny because he's a personification of like the chihuahua who's like gets at the bigger dogs, because this boy doesn't know when to back down and to shut his mouth and he's constantly getting into trouble. And to throw in just like a little extra spice, there's a mob story in here. We're running away from mobs and organized crimes and there's murder. It's insane how much goes on in these books, especially because how short they are. This first book's not even 300 pages and the other books are equally as pretty quick to read. But this is such a story that is balls to the wall crazy, but will stick with you for so long. I promise you, you probably won't read something like this again. All for the Game is such a unique experience that I think everyone should at least try it. Okay, next recommendation I have for you is anyone who enjoys the trope enemies to lovers, because what I have for you is the best enemies to lovers story. And I have never read a better enemies to lovers story than this book in this series, and that is Captive Prince by C.S. Pacat. In this book, we're following our main character, Damon, who is a prince of Aquilos. However, we join Damon on the night that his kingdom is being overthrown by his half-brother, and Damon himself is captured into slavery, where his identity and title and power is entirely stripped away, and he is actually sold to the enemy nation Ver, who Aquilos and Ver have a long-standing history of antagonism and have been at war for many, many years. But more than that, Damon is actually sold to the Prince of Ver, Laurent. And the thing about his new master is that Damon had actually killed his older brother. So Damon must not only survive in an enemy nation, but hope that his identity is not discovered and that he is the actual killer of the beloved deceased print, especially by Laurent, who is known to be not only very beautiful, but very cruel. When I tell you that this book does not play with enemies, I'm saying that I read this first book and it's a completed trilogy, and I finished this first book, I was like, how the fuck are they ever gonna fall in love? How the fuck are they ever gonna fall in love? They were true enemies with legit reasons of why they were antagonistic to each other and real problems that they're going to have to work through. But when I tell you that the romance in this is so beautiful, it is so beautiful and so gripping, and just, you need to read it. If you love enemies to lovers, you need to read this, because this is the pinnacle of enemies to lovers. You will never read a better enemies to lovers than this book and this series, because my god, C.S. Pacat just know what they are doing. They have it down pat. They understand what we mean when we say enemies to lovers, because boy howdy are they enemies, and man, does it turn into such an epic love story. Okay, my next recommendation is for someone who loves a little bit of a slow burn. And when I mean a slow burn, I mean an actual slow burn. And I mean we are pining for books at a time, we're aching for that kiss, but we get these subtle moments of longing and touching and almost kisses, and you just fall in love. And the perfect slow romance I have for you is Heaven Official's Blessing by MXTX. This is a Chinese Danmei novel, and do not let that intimidate you. This is actually a very easy to get into Danmei if you've never read Danmei before. So this is an 8-volume series, so it is quite a lengthy series if you want something to really sink your teeth into, and again, to really enjoy a nice slow burn. So in this book, we're following our main character, Xie, who is actually a disgraced god that has been banished from heaven and forced to work his way up to godhood once more. We join Xie on the day he is able to reascend into heavens. However, it has been centuries since Xie was last a god, and he does not have the most stellar reputation. In fact, he's been known as the god of misfortune. But Xie just wants to live his life out as a scrap god, but in his return to heaven, he ends up stumbling into many a mystery. And one of those mysteries actually caused him to run into Hua Chang, who is known as Crimson Sought Rain, or one of the 3 ghost kings that still walk the world. Hua Chang is known as the most dangerous ghost king to have ever existed, and Xie suddenly finds himself the object of his fascination. And it turns out that they maybe have more of a past than Xie remembers. This is so good. This is long. When I say this is a slow burn, I mean it's a slow burn. I'm talking about books upon books where we are getting like subtle inches forward in their relationship, but the entire time you're just swooning over their devotion to each other and just the love that they share. And this again is an explicit LGBTQIA+ romance, so there is no censorship going on here. Their lovers are devoted to each other. There's several kisses going on. A really easy way to ease yourself into Danmeis if you've never read them before. Don't worry, there'll be a video for that later on. But in addition to that, Heaven Official's Blessing also has both a comic and a TV show where you can watch and kind of follow along that are both really faithful adaptations to the novel itself. So if you ever find yourself getting a little lost in the pages, there are beautiful and faithful adaptations that you can kind of watch and follow along with and dive straight in. So maybe you want to watch the first 2 seasons of the show and then dive into the 3rd book. That would be totally okay too. Okay, so the next recommendation I have for you is a book with an older protagonist, because I know as someone in their late 20s, I am sick and tired of reading about teenagers. I just want to read about 30-something-year-olds, 20-something-year-olds doing the things, and you know, maybe not being as ambitious and as wild as some of the teenagers. And this was the perfect book. It was cozy, it was sweet, and it was heartbreaking. And that is House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. I feel like I don't need to say a lot about this book because this book was everywhere. And honestly, for a really good reason, because House in the Cerulean Sea is a beautiful, beautiful story in which we are following our main character, who is a caseworker in the department in charge of magical youth, or essentially the foster system for kids that have magical abilities and or are magical beings. But Linus is kind of at a point in his life where he just feels very stagnant. It's quiet, there's not a lot going on in his life. However, one day, upper management decides to give Linus a case of a highly dangerous and highly confidential orphanage based off in a faraway island. So Linus travels out there and ends up meeting Arthur, the caretaker and headmaster of this orphanage. And so Linus is there to figure out what is going on, but also to learn about who these children are and who Arthur is and what are they doing on this island and how are they all coming together to essentially create a family. This was a beautifully slow story, but also a good story just about family and love and acceptance and learning how to to break out of your own quiet mold. The next recommendation I have for you is if you want something that kind of gives rom-com-y vibes with a little bit of magical element in it, and that is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. So One Last Stop follows our main character, August, who has just moved to New York City, and she is trying to figure out who she is as a person and what she wants to do with her life. Well, one day as she's going to ride the subway, she ends up meeting the most beautiful girl that she's ever seen, Jane. And the more she starts talking to Jane, the more she falls in love and really starts getting interested in this girl who looks like a 1970s punk. However, the more she talks to Jane, the more she realizes that Jane is actually from the 70s and she is stuck in a time loop on this subway. So August decides to make it her mission to break Jane free from this time loop and hopefully fall in love in the process. When I say this book gives like rom-com vibes, it's got everything. It's got the cheesy moments, it's got the really funny and witty dialogue, we got this really great setup and a wonderful like supporting cast. I loved it. Everything about this was so much fun. And I went into this really skeptical because I did not know if this was going to be a book for me. I'm not really a person that loves a contemporary setting with one magical element in it. I much prefer in either all magical element or all contemporary moment, but this was the perfect mixture between the two in that the magical element or the time loop going on is just integrated enough that it doesn't feel forced or out of place, but it also is not overwhelming and it still gives you that contemporary vibe. Highly recommend it. A very quick read, and Casey McQuiston is a modern day queen when it comes to LGBTQIA+ romances. And speaking of the queen, we're gonna keep rolling because she deserves 2 spots on this list. Yes, I'm going both One Last Stop and the crown jewel of Red, White, and Royal Blue. I have to do both because both of these fit that rom-com vibe for different reasons. Where One Last Stop is more of that kind of magical, punchy rom-com, this one's definitely a little bit more soulful in my opinion. Red, White, and Royal Blue follows our main characters, Alex and Henry, who are the sons of the President of the United States and a prince of the English royal family, and they do not get along. In fact, they ended up creating a controversy at a party, and so their PR team essentially says, you two must make nice to smooth this over so no one thinks that the relationship between the United States and the royal family is horrible. So Alex and Henry are forced to create a friendship and to get along. However, the more they interact, the more they find out that they maybe actually like the other one. But then the problem becomes, how can 2 boys very much in the public eye end up creating a relationship that could have potential consequences for foreign diplomatic relations of their countries? This is the first Casey McQuiston book I ever read, and when I tell you, I binged this whole book in a day. I started to read it and then I did not stop because it gripped my attention, and just the pining in this book was so well done. You really felt for each of these boys because this is a book that is told in both of their perspectives, and so you can just feel the longing they had for each other and then the real world consequences that would happen if they started a relationship and something went wrong. It was beautiful, it was fun, it was engaging, and there's a reason why this book has survived for so long, why a lot of people still talk about it and why a lot of people still recommend it, because it is that good. And you know what? I think it just made a little bit of history. Okay, the next recommendation I have is for someone who's looking for something entirely contemporary and looking for disability rep. For that, I have Every Word You Never Said by Jordan Green. So in this book, we're following our main characters, Jacob and Skylar. Jacob comes from a very troubled family where his father is constantly on his case and he just feels pressure to be perfect and can never express who he really is. Skylar, on the other hand, has recently moved to the city and is a new transfer to Jacob's high school. The thing about Skylar though is he is completely nonverbal and he communicates mostly through text messages, and he enjoys wearing skirts, which is very jarring to a very small knit community who's never seen someone like Skylar before. And Jacob finds himself immediately fascinated with Skylar and kind of enamored with who he is as a person. And so in this book, we're following a relationship not only as Jacob learns to stand up against his father, but also gets closer to Skylar, who himself is dealing with anxiety and trying to find his own voice when he doesn't have one physically. This was a very, very cute story and a very quick read. Because this is a YA novel, we are definitely dealing with younger issues, but I definitely think there's still a lot of readability and adaptability to an older audience. And again, I love the disability rep in this. It wasn't one that focuses on the sadness that comes with disability or like the shame that they feel. Skylar very much knows who he is and is not ashamed for being who he is. And I love that, especially in contrast with Jacob, who feels like he must hide his identity. Again, this was a very cute story. I love the relationship between the two of them, and and I feel like the development went really, really well. Okay, next recommendation I have for you is Pirates. LGBTQ Romances and Pirates, it match made in heaven. Like if you love Black Flag or Our Flag Means Death, this is the book for you. And that of course is In Deeper Waters by F.T. Lukens. You've heard me talk about F.T. Lukens' work on this before. I love her to death. She's amazing with her stories. They're all standalone novels, so you get a encapsulated romance in it, and they come with such pretty covers. So In Deeper Waters follows our main character, Tal, who is a prince about to embark on his coming of age tour, which is a tradition in his family that as you come to age, you go sailing across the kingdom to meet people and to get to know the kingdom as itself. However, Tal is not very excited for this tour because he doesn't know who he is as a person. He doesn't know how he's going to fit in his family. However, while on this tour, he ends up rescuing Athlin from captivity. But the thing about Athlin is that he is very secretive, and Tal finds him fascinating and wants to know more and more about him. However, when Tal frees Athlin, he jumps overboard and straight into the ocean and disappears. And Tal thinks that he jumped to his own death because there is no way he could survive open waters like that. Yet a few days later, Tal finds Athlin on dry land completely unharmed. This is a very cute story. It's a very short story. It's only about 300-ish pages long, and the perfect combination of pirates, of mythical creatures, of sweet romance, and a bit of a coming of age story as we're watching Tal come more and more into himself. I highly recommend anything from F.T. Lukens for this list because they just write beautiful LGBTQIA+ romances with a lot of diverse lead characters. Okay, the very last recommendation I have for you is for all those people who are like, Emily, I can't read a novel. I want some short stories. And for that, how about some interconnected short stories? So one you can pick up every now and again and you end up getting the whole picture later on. And for that, I have Forever by Cindy Paul. Forever is a series of short stories set in a single kingdom that are all interconnected to a larger mystery surrounding the princess named Ever. Each story follows its own unique character with their own unique romance, as well as a diverse cast of main characters. What I love most about this collection and what I love most about Cindy Paul and Ever After Prince as an entity is that they are a publishing company set on a mission to include and write more diverse main characters and love stories. And what I love about them is every work that they put out is not only of really good quality, but are beautiful in their composition, as not only do most of the books have these gorgeous covers, but they usually include illustrations to go with it. I really, really enjoy this collection. It was their very first collection they put out, and I've been a fan ever since. But what's more than that, they're also an indie author, so if you love supporting the small authors and indie authors, this is a great place to start. I will leave their website linked in the description down below. And again, this is a whole bunch of interconnected short stories, all connect together to a larger mystery of what's going on and figuring out who is Ever and why is everything connected to her. Alright, but that is all the recommendations I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found something to expand your reading days, and I hope you found stuff to add to your TBR, even though I know, I too don't need to add more, but you know, it's always a little bit fun to have more books on your radar that you otherwise may not have thought about. But if you like this video, consider leaving a thumbs up or a comment down below. Let me know what was your favorite book of the list if you read any, or what book you're most interested in picking up. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!